So you might notice I'm in a new space, but I've basically set things up to be almost identical as to how they were before with a couple different changes. Sorry if there's a little bit of an echo because I'm still gonna put a bunch of stuff up on the walls. I didn't realize there'd be so much echo in here, but it's fine. I had to move. It's gonna be good. So there's these ice alien romance books that are blowing up on TikTok because obviously I'm not remotely surprised. I'm sure there's a lot of alien romance books out there, so it was really only a matter of time. This series blew up on Book Talk, which is the TikTok version of BookTube, which is like the YouTube version of people who talk about books, but I feel like this is somewhere in between like BookTube and Bookstagram. There's just lots of words for these book sections of the internet, but this series is called Ice Planet Barbarians, which presents its own issues title-wise alone. And the series, or I suppose phenomenon, was written by Ruby Dixon, which is a pen name. But people have been losing their minds over these, making fun of the covers or the content and just overall having a great time. Because the covers certainly are something. It's like spending 10 minutes in Photoshop and being like, ah yes, I am a graphic designer. But it's on par for the genre. Weird erotic romance novels demand these weird covers, and add in the fact that it involves aliens. That means it demands the shitty photo manipulation too. Like, say what you will about TikTok, but this app can change careers. There's a family walking by me. But yeah, say what you will about TikTok, but this app can change careers. This story was fairly notorious already, and they've been getting churned out pretty regularly since 2015. So even before TikTok, they were already pretty popular and well-regarded romance novels. But even factoring in piracy, I would assume that Ruby Dixon is getting a very nice little pay bump over the past few months with people like just flocking to these stories, at least the first one. I know that my accountant's gonna have a really fun time going through my expenses next year, because there are like 20 of these, including some add-on like 0.5s that go in between some of the books, and I just can't do that to myself. I have neither the time nor the mental fortitude. I am in the process of moving. I'm kind of living in two places right now. And I'm pretty particular with my alien stories, and this just isn't cutting it. Why am I trying to logically critique my science fiction experience with alien erotica? Now, I'm not here to judge the people that are into reading these. Sometimes you just want to read some smut. This just isn't my particular brand. Either way, I couldn't do all of them, so I did the first 3, which I think is a decent sampling of what we're experiencing here. I will say, at least with these 3, they kind of got better as they went along, at least in certain respects. Like, they seemed to add in more plot, and the characters got better, though I think the main girl on the second one is probably my favorite of the 3. Then I realized that the 4th one was going to focus on a girl who got knocked out and drug away for mating purposes, so I figured I would quit while I was moderately ahead. So let's start with the synopsis of the first book so you understand what we're working with. It is mostly ridiculous, but as we get into the actual story, I'll be glossing over some instances of like pretty serious assault and a ton of situations that lack consent. So if you have issues with that or you're sensitive to it, just keep that in mind before you go forward. But let's read the obviously ridiculous synopsis. You'd think being abducted by aliens would be the worst thing that could happen to me, and you'd be wrong, because now the aliens are having ship trouble, and they've left their cargo of human women, including me, on an ice planet. And the only native inhabitant I've met, he's big, horned, blue, and really has a thing for me. Well, that's putting it lightly. She wakes up with his face buried in her nether regions, but we'll get there. So it doesn't ease into this at all. She's just immediately on the ship. 1 minute Georgie Carruthers doesn't believe in aliens, and the next minute she's stuck on some kind of ship prison with a poop bucket. Mostly the description of these events are making me think of that SNL skit with Ryan Gosling and Kate McKinnon.
I woke up in a dirty metal dome, and 40 little gray aliens watched me pee in a steel bowl.
And we need to get from here to sexy aliens. But since I hadn't read the synopsis before I started reading it, I thought that it was just going to be really messed up with these captors who are doing horrible things to them, which it is that, but like I thought it was going to be more so based on this intro. So she wakes up, realizes she's been abducted, and then just goes back to sleep and dreams of work. And, you know, like, honestly, relatable, girl. Kinda. But we eventually find out that the aliens have abducted a lot of girls, and 6 of them are actually in hibernation pods, and the ones that are awake are just like the extras. All of them are 22, they all live alone with no nearby family, and none of them are pregnant. Except the one that is, and then the aliens deal with that. They don't kill the girl, but they deal with the pregnancy. Glossing over what happened, but it's not great. And there were 2 types of aliens on this ship, like little green ones that I'm gonna imagine looking like this, and then like the larger guards that are described as having like basketball looking heads, so like that's fun. But it's not really fun at all, it's kind of a huge nightmare. If the girls are too loud, they get assaulted, which is like a really nice cleaned up way to describe what happens to them. So again, be mindful before you dive into this, just immediately expecting memes. Like this isn't kissing the coronavirus, this was published seriously. There is some humor, but there's some darkness too, we'll just put it that way. And I feel like they had to show the true horrors of these aliens so that when they get to the other aliens later, they seem less messed up by comparison. But one girl ends up so traumatized by what happens to her that she like runs out into the snow in a nightgown and freezes to death, so... But I will say, I pumped on the audiobook while I was reading this so that I could stay focused on it and get through it faster, and I thought it was very interesting that Georgie has a Southern American accent. Kept things interesting, added some pizzazz. But they all end up dumped on this ice planet, and most of them survive. But the central important characters in this book, other than Georgie, are Liz and Kira, who had a translator implanted in her ear so that she could like relay messages back and forth between the aliens and the girls. Lucky you! But since Georgie was the most outspoken with the escape plan, she's the one who gets to venture out into the mysterious snowland dressed in a suit of a dead basketball alien. And she very quickly gets caught in a snare and then passes out before she's found by Vectel, which is where the book switches POVs. No need for 2 different books here, friends. Ruby's got it covered in one. And he seems to have this like semi-proper accent of like proper English speaking, so I must say that the audiobook was a good call. But this dude is instantly horned up on Georgie. Starts talking about something called a quee inside him and how none of his own people made it sing, but she does. She is making me resonate. She is mine. That's it. It's 50 Shades in space. But maybe even more intense. At least Christian established some kind of consent. Meanwhile, Vectel here is nose deep in hoo-ha trying to recreate the effects of a Gwyneth Paltrow candle while she's passed out. But she thinks it's some kind of wonderful dream until she feels his horns. It wasn't a monster come to eat me. It was this monster who's come to eat me out. Oh my God. So she wakes up and is kind of thrown off, but just lets it keep happening because it feels so good because he's got like a textured tongue, so... she lets it fly. Until he tries to send it home, so she kicks him. And he's confused that she doesn't want to mate, because if his quee is singing, hers must be too. But then he realizes that she doesn't have the glowing eye, so she probably doesn't have a quee. But other than being horned, he is blue, has a tail, and is about 7 feet tall. And this confusion is just going to continue. She doesn't speak his language, he can't speak hers, she doesn't have a translator. And all he wants to do is smash. They have to find food and clean her up, but before she can even focus on food, she gets distracted on like a paragraph long description of his man bits, which definitely sound more like lots. And it's like they designed it to sound like the ideal sex toy. It's big, it has ridges, and there's an inexplicable knob like an inch up from it that like, I wonder what that could be for. Like it doesn't seem to have any practical use for his species because he's confused by the hooded lady bits of the female anatomy and refers to it as a third nipple, which would imply that his people don't have it. Like I think Georgie will literally go on to describe him as a rabid vibrator, like he is literally ribbed and nubbed for her pleasure. Please let this stay monetized. But nothing happens. She specifically mentions that she's more interested in bathing than playing hide the sausage. I hate Georgie. But she quickly remembers that she's supposed to be getting help for this group of girls that's probably freezing to death, so when she starts wandering off in that direction, she ends up falling into a cave of these like Wookiee looking things, but apparently they're white, so like just Yetis. Vectel manages to save her from them, gets her back to the cave, and after she's all warm and fed, well, she's ready to fuck. And he is purring up a storm, which is what he calls resonating, which means he is not only ribbed and nubbed for her pleasure, but also vibrates. And while they're going at it and having a grand old time, she just keeps thinking about how awesome it is that she can't get pregnant. Meanwhile, he's thinking about how awesome it is that he can get her pregnant. Because that's what resonating is, the quee basically picking your ideal mate. Take a guess which one of them is right. But they do finally make it back to the girls who aren't doing so great, but since Kira can translate everything that Vectel's saying, she knows he thinks of Georgie as his mate, and Georgie's not necessarily into that. But then there's like some other drama brewing. You see, Vectel's quite excited that there's all these unmated women here. Apparently his species going extinct. They only have 5 adult females and over 20 unmated men, so like 5 girls are like gold. Then remember, there's 6 more in hibernation pods. Oh no. But as they're heading heading back to his people to get more help to rescue the girls. They make a quick stop at the Cave of the Elders, which he thinks is magic, but after a quick little fuck sesh, Georgie realizes it's a spaceship. And she manages to talk to it, and the ship has the ability to implant Vectel's language into her brain so that she can speak back to him. But it also explains that Vectel's species has been stranded here and survived by accepting a Navid symbiont, aka the Qui, which allows their body to adapt to the environment and survive a gas present on the planet. And if you don't allow a Qui in your body, you die within like 8 days. And then somehow it also just picks your perfect reproductive mate, so yeah. But she insists that she's not his mate and that humans get to choose that. And he's like, whoa there, Skipper, just wait till you get your Qui and then we'll see. And even though she seems so contrarian to the idea of being his mate, she also doesn't think she'd go back to Earth and that she's Team Vectel now. And we don't even have Team Alice to offset it. I'm pissed. When they do finally make it back to his people where he's chief, they run into a hunter named Rahash, who is definitely interested that there are 5 more of these weird lady things that are unmated waiting to be rescued. But now he's saying that there's only 4 adult females in his group, but he definitely said 5 before. Like, how do you mess that up when you're typing out the number? But I would like to point out that this weird ass resonance thing at least seems to have the decency to wait until someone's like of age before it claims its mate. So right there, it's slightly less messed up than werewolf imprinting in Twilight, at least in that capacity. So his people, the Suqui, are obviously very weirded out by her appearance, but he just talks about how amazing she is and how he loves her, and she ruins a nice moment by saying this: I'm totally giving him a handy for real when we're alone again. It ends up being a blowy. For some reason it takes her this long to realize that the Qui specifically makes decisions based on reproductive compatibility. So out of nowhere, she's like, oh my god, I am pregnant! And she's pissed until she's suddenly not. It's very weird. I guess there's just not much writing room to work with. So they head off to save the other girls, and all the unmated hunters come along because they're quite enthusiastic. They all get that ship to teach them English, and Rahash is like first in line because, as Georgie puts it, he's definitely planning to score himself some human booty. Ma'am, those are your friends, or something, theoretically. And of course, when they get back to them, someone starts purring up a storm but doesn't want to reveal themselves. So Georgie gets to explain to them the options. They can try and fight the other aliens when they get back, overthrow them, and take the ship back to Earth, or have a parasite implanted in them and get resonated with by 7-foot-tall blue-horned aliens for baby-making purposes. And they're all like, well, that sure does sound better than becoming cattle for the other aliens when they come back. Look, I would simply die. So they decided they're staying, which means that they have to wake up the other 6 ladies from their sleeping pod, and it's like, surprise Christmas for the Suqui. Imagine being woken up after not even realizing you were abducted only to be told that this alien species is going to use you for breeding purposes. Death. So in order to harvest a Qui and save these girls from the sickness, they need to take down this massive beast, and I just want to know how the hell they figured that out in the first place. Like, the only thing I can think of is that the ship let them know that that was the deal on this planet, but I don't know. But it is literally like the Host. It's this like little worm-like thing that they need to implant in your neck, and then it gives you glowing eyes. Actually, I think the last time I wore this shirt for a video was my The Host video. Main difference is that they actually get to keep their consciousness. The only time that the Qui is noticeable is when it's like resonating to somebody. And then it is unbearably noticeable, which we will come to realize. But while everybody's having their Qui inserted, Rahash drags Liz off somewhere, so that's great. Doesn't matter, the Vectel said that humans are different and need to like consent despite the Qui. But for some reason, Georgie isn't like the least bit concerned. If anything, she feels bad for Rahash because of how headstrong Liz is. So now that she's got her Qui, she sneaks off with Vectel to bump uglies again because now it's singing too. But just as they're getting super into it, the other aliens seem to come back, but then they just like leave the atmosphere, and she assumes it's because they realize that like the trackers weren't on humans anymore. So they head back to their cave to live a lovely life waiting for little hybrid alien baby to arrive. The end. And then I read book 2. So each of these books follows a different couple and sometimes adds some degree of plot conflict. So this one obviously picks up with Liz and Rahash, though there is a 1.5 that's presumably just a lot of relationship and sex stuff with Georgie and Vectel. No thank you! But immediately I find Liz to be the better character. The book is still a dumpster fire in terms of autonomy and consent, but overall better. But the big first consent issue is that Liz doesn't want the Qui. Specifically saying, Georgie may have been blinded by big blue alien dick, but I am not. Yes, Qui! But Rahash forces it into her. The parasite, I mean. Can understand how that might be confusing. Because apparently his parents hated each other despite the quiz, so Liz is just gonna have to go along with the kidnapping and make a family. He's the Massimo of the alien world.
Are you lost, baby girl?
And then when she assumes that he's one of the Sakui that didn't get the English upgrade because he never answers anything she says, he just goes along with it by not ever correcting her when she talks about him. And he's kind of the one in the roughest shape, like he's missing part of a horn, his face is scarred, so she's commented that he's the scariest, which hurt his fifis. And even though she's been angry with him the entire time for, kidnapping her, she's now feeling a swirling of heat inside herself anytime he looks at her. Even after describing him as the alien version of Grumpy Cat. But once she gets the Kui implanted, she becomes so overwhelmed by arousal that she just starts touching herself. Then he comes back and sees it and tries to go for her, and she's like, hell no, don't touch me. So then they just mutually take care of themselves while she's super angry for wanting his blong, which is blue schlong. Why does my brain do this? And despite the Kui singing out to him, Liz does not want this and starts planning her escape, trying to find materials to make a bow and arrow, because she's also a big-time hunter. Almost gets eaten by a weird bamboo murder fish and gets so horned up after he saves her that she allows him to service her mouthly, but not go any further, and then he slips out an English word. And the jig is up, Buster. But he's like, I didn't lie, you just never asked. Okay. But because she kept telling him not to touch her and not to do certain things while she was literally guiding his head to do those things, he thinks her saying no is some kind of human mating ritual. Again, she refuses me? I snort, incredulous. This human is not to be believed, but I stop in my tracks, watching her. And even though the women of the Sakui tribe aren't supposed to hunt because there's so few of them, Rahash actually respects her abilities and desire to be a hunter and lets her join in and thinks her bow and arrow is quite ingenious and innovative. Because apparently they haven't been smart enough to evolve past spears and knives. Then she sees something that reminds her of an Ewok, which is a Metlak, which is the same thing that reminded Georgie of a Wookiee. Have a look at those two things on screen right now at the same time. I guess it's because this one was a baby, but still, maybe just pick one Star Wars species and commit. So Rahash almost dies saving her from them, and she has to set his broken bones and then drag him back to the cave and get him back to full health, which ultimately culminates in their unions. That means they do it. But paradise can't last for long. 2 other members of the tribe were sent after them because he obviously wasn't supposed to run off with her like a dog with a bone to hide. And I can assure you there was some bone hiding. I'm sorry, I can't set myself up like that. Anyways, Rahash ends up pissing her off again when she says that they don't need to learn her name. They should just be referring to her as Rahash's mate. Yeah, buddy, you're not helping your case here. But she ends up asking these 2 about Rahash's parents. Apparently his mom fought the residents and didn't want to live with him after having his kids, so he kidnapped her and dragged her away to have more. At least they're consistent with how bad they are. But then she and the new baby apparently died, and then he just came back with Rahash super scarred and then got exiled. So then Rahash was just raised parentless. But regardless of what anybody thinks of the kidnapping, she's actually completely on board with Rahash now and wants everyone to know that even though he literally drug her off to a cave, she's with him willingly now. Clever Liz, she pleasures me with her mouth so others can know she's with me willingly. My mate is devious and wonderful. Then when they get back to the settlement, she's just super overwhelmed by all the people and the noise and just misses their nice little cave together. Wow, what an easy to please, low maintenance hunting girlfriend. It's like the ideal wife for a maritime Canadian. That's gonna be funny to 5 of you. But the healer obviously checks her out and surprise, she's also with child. God, these things work fast. It's been 3 days. However, the happy couple cannot rejoice because Rahash has broken a rule by kidnapping her. Imagine that. So his punishment is exile, and because Liz is pregnant, they won't let her go to be with him. Oh my god, the drama. It's all still so fucked up, but still significantly better than the first book. So Liz is obviously pissed and just starts stirring up shit, commenting that Rahash respected her enough to treat her as an equal, let her hunt, and was telling her things that they're not being told back here at the camp or the settlement. And if we didn't hate Vectel, the hoo-ha violator, by this point, his big plan is to give Liz away to one of the older widowers to just help take care of the kid and then have her in exchange? How am I now team douchebag that drug girl to a cave? So she comes up with a plan. She ends up taking the guy who's been guarding her, a Hako, hostage, which is punishable by exile to make Vectel understand how much she insists on being with Rahash and how miserable she'll make things for everyone if she stays. So he says they'll both both be exiled until it's time for her baby to be born, and then they can come back, and until then they have to do a bunch of extra hunting for the brutal months, because apparently all this snow is just like the bitter months. But wins all around. Now, I also noticed a little bit of a trend. People and things mentioned at the end of one book seemingly out of the blue become very significant in the next book. For example, Liz mentions that she really likes hunting in the first book, and then that becomes like a central plot point of the second book. So when Kira starts mentioning that her translator's been bothering her, I assumed that she was going to be the major focus of the third book, which is the only reason why I ended up reading it, because I wanted to know, and it was. Now, book 3 seems to be the least messed up in some ways, and probably has what could be considered the most amount of plot so far. So not all of these ladies got resonated with, but it's not stopping some of them from like getting their smash on, but not Kira. Hako from the last book definitely likes her, but she doesn't want to mess around with someone if their Kui is just going to pull them in another direction later. So she's just stuck in this hell where all the people around her are having very loud sex, and then her translator just amplifies it and translates it. Hate that for you, bestie. And there's a theory as to why some of the girls weren't resonated with. Since it's based on mating potential, the ones that weren't resonated with were probably the ones who weren't able to have babies for whatever reason. Some of them are on birth control. Megan's body probably just isn't ready for it again. And it seems like a pretty solid theory because Kira knows that she's unable to have kids. But Hako is damn interested even if he didn't resonate. Specifically saying that even though his Kui did not sing, his cock certainly pays attention to her. So much so that he denies the advances of a Sakui that wants to cheat on her mate with him. Ooh, starting to have some questions about like how this all works. Like apparently once they mate, if they didn't like each other, they may not have a happily ever after. Like does the connection just tap out when they reproduce, but most people just enjoy staying together? I don't know. But Ehaka isn't down to fool around with Asha anymore. So he bails out to give Kira a courtship gift he made her, which is literally a replica of his penis because Liz made a joke about him doing that in the last book and they can't detect sarcasm. And he has a little nickname for her, Sad Eyes, which would be cute if he wasn't trying to whip out his wang all the time. The lighting just changed a lot. I hope it's not too bad. Oh my god. But I immediately sense an issue on the horizon. We're told that Kui can speed up healing, but they may also be able to heal issues that someone was dealing with long term. Megan, the one who had been pregnant on the original ship, actually goes to talk to a healer to see about her Kui, and then she finds out that her body is actually almost ready to have a kid again, and the Kui is speeding it along. So she almost immediately resonates with someone. Now the issue here, of course, is going to be the implication that women who can't have children are damaged, because we don't like that. But Hako is dedicated to his pursuits. He finally figured out what kissing is because it just wasn't something their species did, but they call it mouth mating, but like, I think that's something else. And she just decides to give in. She does really like him and she's really attracted to him. She's just worried that he'll leave her. I'm uncertain about the details of kissing, but I'm sure I can figure it out. If it's anything like licking I'll just watch her for her cues. But as they're kissing, the translator picks up the other aliens. So she realizes they're basically just waiting for a storm to clear before they bop down to get the goods, aka the ladies. So she freaks out and assumes they'll be able to track her with the translator and put everybody else at risk. Because again, this other species has advanced tech, fancy guns, and the Sakui were confused by a bow and arrow. So she comes up with a plan to go to the Elder Cave, which is actually just a ship, in hopes that it'll have medical equipment to remove the translator. And the night before the trip, she just decides to give in to what she wants and mess around with Hako, which is where we get this gem of a line. Ah, I have found your third nipple. Oh my god, guys, they're not similar in the slightest. Why are those the two pieces of anatomy that you would compare together? A lady wrote this. But they make it to the ship. Another human, Harlow, decided she wanted to come because she was kind of a bit of a mechanic and wanted to see if she could put some stuff together with the ship tech. And thankfully the ship has a self-assist medical bay so they can pull that translator right on out. Then she decides to have the ship equip her with the Sakui language and then the two from the kidnapper alien. So she's still a translator, just a lot more quiet. And even without the resonance, Hako has decided that Kira is his mate. So she finally has to tell him that she can't have kids and he just doesn't care, even though he was just talking about how excited he was to have a family, but now he's like, that just means we can have a lot more loud and uninterrupted sexy times. I'm being pulled in so many directions. So they do it. Of course, a marvelous first time for her apparently. Have you ever had a male lick your honey before? Oh my god. But the next morning, her and Harlow notice something unusual when they're trying to figure out if the other aliens have landed yet. There's an extra sequoia wandering around the planet. Gee, I wonder who will be the focus of the next book. The aliens have been hovering above in their ship, which means they either did track her to the translator before they were able to destroy it, or they just noticed that that was a ship and decided that would be a good spot to just chill by. So Liz has a plan that involves getting captured. She took one of the ship filters that has a concentrated level of that toxic gas from the planet, gets it into the ship's ventilation system, and it kills all the other aliens because they don't have a queen, then crashes the ship into a mountain before escaping. Like, look at that, an action adventure in our romance novel. But while all this is happening, Harlow's getting supplies to help one of the sequoia that got injured, and then she hears a purring sound before she gets knocked out from behind. Gee, I wonder who that could have been. Oh my god, it's getting so bright. What do I do? I'm just sorry. I'm not equipped for this. We'll just deal with the lighting changes. I'm so sorry. And Ehako is a dick and thinks that she ran off to like save herself. So when Liz gets back, they just head back to the settlement to deal with her injuries without any consideration to her. So rip Harlow. And when they do get back, they decide that they have to send some of the settlement to like their older settlement because there's just too many people. And Vexel makes Ehako the chief of that location. So of course, he and Kira bang when they go to pick out their perfect cave for themselves. He uses his bone dick replica on her. It's all very romantic. But then it cuts to moving day, and Asha is complaining that her cave is too small. But when she touches Ehako's arm, Kira gets so jealous. But then he starts to resonate, and she's like, oh my god, why are you resonating with Asha? But it's not with Asha, it's with her. It seems that the Quee have adapted her body for a pregnancy, but the book words it as mending broken body parts, which I just don't like. I thought this was going to be a really romantic acceptance of her not being able to have kids and him respecting and loving her regardless. Again, women that can't have children are not broken, but you know, as long as she's happy, that's all that matters. And I do like that they actually chose to be together. Like, Ehako just accepted her as she was, didn't see her greatest insecurity as any kind of flaw. And other than giving her a bone replica of his blong and a few inappropriate comments, he was like quite respectful even when he was being possessive. But then he ruins it right at the end when he says, your cunt is mine and mine alone, sweet Kira. Had to go out with a bang. I'm sorry. But yeah, it was pretty obvious to me that the next one was going to be about Harlow and whoever this random sequoia that knocked her out to mate was. And I just didn't need that energy, so I figured I'd stop at what could be considered a high point. And I guess from this point on, the humans will make their own ice planet holiday. Every other unpaired girl gets shacked up. They add in some new ones. There's an earthquake that leads to some amnesia. Ice babies? Someone literally buying a girl from the intergalactic black market. That one's actually quite well reviewed. We even get one from Ash's perspective. Gonna be honest, if these were less focused on mating and maybe a little gay and fan fiction for something I actually liked, I'd probably keep reading them. So basically what I'm saying is if these were completely different, I'd probably keep reading them. Because I've like read some pretty horrible fan fiction. I just couldn't stop myself from looking at the disaster. So like I could do this, but I will not. That's where I'm jumping off unless there's like some really interesting development somewheres or there's one in particular people want me to read. But yeah, that is gonna do it for this video on the first 3 books in the Ice Planet Barbarians series, the latest book talk extravaganza, I guess. Lots of really perverted stuff on Book Talk. Y'all good? If you guys have read any of these, let me know what you're thinking down below. If you plan to read them, just let me know what your thoughts are when you do. If you're actually a huge fan of the series, like let me know what you like. Like I get it. Sometimes people just want their smut. But thanks so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, kind of, and we'll catch you all later.